For sure. So, guys, it is now 3 o'clock. Welcome to the Half Guard Half Hour. Today, we are, as you might have heard us already, we are going to be discussing mental health and wellness when it comes to jiu-jitsu or just sports in general. Um, I am amazed and honored to have our special guest here today, Miss Nicole Borger. I hope I didn't butcher it.
Kind of
um,
butchered.
kind of butchered. But with that being said, guys, we're going to jump right into the show. Thank you for joining. I will turn it over to my guest to introduce herself before we start the interview.
Hi, so I'm Nicole Borger. You were close, Mike. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. So what that means is that in New York State, I am licensed to practice as a therapist without supervision. So I have a master's in psychology and I have a second master's in mental health counseling. And then I also have a license in New York State as a psychotherapist. And my specific credentials are LMHC, which means I'm a licensed mental health counselor. So I'm not a medical
Awesome.
doctor, but I am specialized in talk therapy and CBT. CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's identifying some of our thinking and the behaviors that are tied with it, and then trying to change that in ways that impacts our thinking so we could eventually change our thinking. So that's actually super fun, and a lot of the things that I'll talk to today are probably going to be based in that kind of belief about how we think and how we can challenge that thinking a bit and ways that we could impact.
Awesome. Awesome. So before we start deep diving into the mental health side of sports fitness and things of that nature, let's just jump right in. Start by you told us about your 9 to 5, you told us about your degree. Tell us a little bit about you, maybe some uh, sports that you've played growing up as a child, and then more importantly, what got you interested to go to school and go to college for mental health?
So, for my whole life, as long as I can remember, I was an active kid. I, from a young age, I was in dance. I'm not a good, wasn't a good dancer, but there was that activity there. Then I started playing softball. Then I started playing like sports in middle school, field hockey and volleyball. Then I did that all through middle school, through high school, and then when I got to college, there I didn't go to a college with like a very structured athletic program in the city. So I tried like intramural sports, but I didn't really love it, and then I started running. Um, and I would still play social sports once in a while. Like I was on a few social volleyball teams, and that was fun. So I've always really liked that team sport feeling, like that showing up for other people has always been something that's super impactful to me and how I practice sport. And then running was super independent, but I did it with people. So I started running and I started training for the New York City Marathon. I ran the marathon and then I was like, oh, I don't want to run anymore. That seemed to be enough of that. I started weight training. I would still play social sports. And then I had been through a breakup and I was like, I'm going to do kickboxing. I'm going to let this aggression out. I'm going to go punch things. And I thought it was going to be like a I love kickboxing situation, but it actually ended up being this like authentic Muay Thai gym. So that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting like some nice Upper East Side moms. And I like walk into this gym and I remember being, ooh, this is not, what am I doing here? And it ended up being like people who are still my friends to this day, even though I'm not at that gym anymore, but like just like this really cool group of people who were so interested in developing in the sport. And it's not like they were competing and it wasn't like there were any prizes. It was really about the showing up every day, practicing, getting better, like within yourself, and then this network of people who were all kind of looking to connect with people in this sort of way that didn't have to go outside of the gym. It was still there, but it did go outside of the gym. And so then from there, I've just been involved in martial arts from that point forward as this
Awesome.
really cool thing.
Awesome. Awesome. So, um, obviously, with COVID-19, with everything going on, a lot of us have been cooped up inside, some for days, some for weeks, some going on almost 2 months that I am aware of. And, one of the hardest parts of being cooped up is not having activities, whether it's judo, karate, basketball, baseball, softball, soccer, all these different activities that as humans we're used to being out and used to going out to do, and team sports and activities and things of that nature. And so part of the struggle for a lot of people, I think, is the mental health aspect, the aspect of, maybe falling into a rut of being depressed. I've trained jujitsu for 8 years. I've injured myself and then been out for weeks, months. And I always find that there is a certain time and point and place where maybe I get a little depressed and I start overeating and things of that nature. So as a mental health expert and mental wellness expert, what are you seeing? What are you hearing maybe from some friends or people who are in sports? What do you see has been the biggest impact of COVID-19 and quarantining on the community in sports or martial arts?
Yeah. So I'll get right back to that. I want to touch on what you first presented, right? Was this the way in which we can use sport to help our existing mental health stuff? And I think that's really important and really valuable. But I think sometimes what gets lost in that message is that sometimes the mental health stuff is still there. So we're going and we're doing this thing as this way to cope with whatever the underlying issue is. But sometimes the actual issue gets lost and it feels like, oh, without this thing, then what do I do? So a lot of what people are experiencing right now is kind of a side effect of this being a really healthy and positive coping skill, but so much time goes into it that maybe other coping skills are underdeveloped. And so, like you're saying, with an injury, right? When you get injured, you still have access to the space. So you can go on your crutches, hop your way over, sit on the mat, and still be around everybody. But in this case, it's like we're all injured together. Everybody's injured. Everybody's knees are broken and we don't know when it's going to heal, but we don't have access to each other in this way, right? And so I think what you're saying and what you're asking is like, what are people experiencing? And it's that,
Yeah.
right? It's this lack of being able to connect with each other, and it's the lack of being able to engage in the sport. And also there's, I think, a little bit of frustration and anger that this thing was taken from us. Similar to how when you're injured, you get angry that now you can't do this thing that you really love, right? Like you don't necessarily, you're not angry at your knee or your hamstring or your shoulder, right? But you're angry that it happened. But you can go and get support. People are like, oh, don't worry, man, you'll be back in 2 weeks. You're like, no, I won't. But you still get that. And now we're like,
Right.
we don't know when we're going to be back. We can't plan for it. And we can't connect in that same way with the people who are usually supporting us, or even just to watch the sport happen, because people aren't able to do it.
Right. So what do you see, in your practice? I'm sure you're still practicing virtually like most other therapists and things of that nature. And, that brings me back around to one thing that I asked before. For people like myself, right? Or people who you talk to on a regular basis, friends who are in team sports or friends who are doing sports and have had that taken away from them now in that capacity. What do you hear? What is the most common feelings that are coming out of this? And what is your advice in coping with those feelings and overcoming that, like, almost sense of loss? Because for me, talking to friends and talking to people, it's almost like somebody died, right? Like it's almost as though like you lost a loved one now that you can't go to the jiu-jitsu gym or you can't go to, you know, Soul Cycle or whatever platform you use to work out your daily aggressions or daily frustrations. What are you seeing, and what's the most common feeling you're hearing about, and what's your best advice in coping right now?
Yeah, that's amazing. There is a really amazing connection, Mike. There's a lot of grief, right? There's a lot of loss. It's really hard because we definitely don't know when things are going to go back. And it is like a death. We're mourning a lot this space that we really protect in our daily lives, right? Most people know the days they go to train, they know who's going to be there, they know what they're going to do, they know what that workout's going to be like. And having that not there feels really hard and sad. And we're also missing those people. So it's almost like a death or a breakup. You know, you just broke up with someone and now you lost access to their friends and family. And, you know, so we're losing that a lot. And people are really sad. People are angry. People are mourning. So there is a lot of that. And I think that's the most common thing that I'm hearing, is that people are just really grieving this loss of the space. But I think the other answer to the question is kind of, what can people do? And I think what it involves, it's a multi-part thing that you have to ask yourself. And you have to start with asking, like, why did I start this? Why is it this sport or this space? Why is it jiu-jitsu or judo or CrossFit or Muay Thai? Why is it one of these things and not anything else? What drew me to that? What kept me there? And when you can figure that out, maybe it's the community, maybe it's the motivation of just having other people around, maybe it's the physical contact, maybe it's that classes are 90 minutes and it fills a chunk of your day that you are usually feeling really depressed during. So if you're doing that, it's a distraction from that depression. Maybe it's the aggression behind it. Even running or CrossFit, all of these things are really good ways to deal with feeling like angry or frustrated or aggressive. But in a contact sport like Muay Thai or like Jiu-Jitsu, we are actually in a really positive environment in a really healthy way most of the time, handling that aggression and releasing it and almost reshaping it to this productive thing. And we get to experience our anger or aggression becoming a productive display instead of a harmful display. So choking someone competitively is so much different than choking someone at the line at Dunkin' Donuts. We don't. So if you can be productive in that aggression and you can see it, oh, okay, when I do it this way, it's helpful. It helps you take that and bring it to other places similarly. So we're missing that. So figuring out and identifying, why did I start this and what's kept me coming? Then you could start to identify the things that you need to really focus on recapturing for yourself. So if you are drawn to the community and the motivation from the group fitness and also the physical contact, think about the physical contact aspect of jiu-jitsu is the draw for a lot of people in ways that they don't fully understand. Really anxious people, like think about a weighted blanket or a thunder huggy for your dog during a thunderstorm, right? It puts pressure on your somatic nervous system, which is a really calming experience. So having a person on top of you creates this really calming experience through your somatic nervous system. So if you're feeling really anxious and overwhelmed, having that weight on you actually creates a soothing effect. So for some people, without even knowing it, they're getting this calming somatic nervous system experience that they're not even fully aware is happening. And so right now, that same person who isn't aware of that might be feeling even more anxious, because we're in this really anxious time where most of us have a heightened level of baseline anxiety, and they're actually really missing that contact in ways they might not even be aware of. So trying to say, like, okay, I'm missing the contact, I'm missing the place for my aggression and I'm missing the group motivation, and then trying to find ways you can recapture that, if that makes sense.
No, for sure, 110%. That leads me to another interesting tidbit because, through my discussions with people here on the half hour, privately, watching Instagram, seeing, one of the big trends that I'm starting to see, and I personally, in my mind go back and forth on it, is this like secret training, right? Like this, like people like getting mats on their roofs or in their homes, or finding ways to secretly train during what is a very dangerous time, especially a contact sport like judo or jiu-jitsu, you know, um, running and all that. That's a whole different animal, but like dangerous living and walking that dangerous line of training while you were living in this COVID-19 world, you know, what what would you tell somebody who's kind of walking that line of living slightly dangerously with these secret roles and these secret trainings that they're doing? Um, what advice would you give somebody of that nature, if any, about, maybe not doing it, or if they're gonna do it, just advice on the way they think?
Well, so it's a very complex question, right? Because some of the people who are doing this, they actually think they're doing it in a safe way. They're doing it with the same person. They're monitoring like where that person's been. But I do think it's important. The other side of that is think about, why does it feel so important right now to do that? And I think for a lot of people, and for me too, when I'm partaking in sport, what keeps me coming back, as much as it's the people and the sport, it's actually my progress. So each day coming back and working on something and building it and getting it better and better and better. And I think this is true for a lot of people, especially in jiu-jitsu, where you need other people to grow and build that skill. I think a lot of people are afraid, if I stop going and I lose 3 months of training, I'm going to lose my progress in this way that feels really scary. Similar to why people don't want to get surgery. People are afraid, oh, my knee is broken and I need surgery on it, but I don't want to. So they'll keep training and training and training in an effort to not miss any training. And then they end up missing more training because now they need more intensive surgery that requires more intensive recovery. So it's that same mindset as going into this. And as far as I've known, people with that mindset, you can't really talk them out of that mindset. So you could just encourage them to do it in the ways that are the safest ways for them and their families, and making sure that they're doing all that they can precaution-wise. But for those of us watching it, just to understand that too and see where that's coming from. But for your own self, if you're feeling that desire and you're not sure why it feels so much like you need to do this, that's probably part of it. This urge to do it, this urgency that if I don't, I'm going to lose everything I worked for. And similar to an injury, that's not necessarily true. As long as you're still engaging in it. If you were injured, you'd be showing up, you'd be watching classes, you'd be rehabbing, you'd be treating it as an opportunity to kind of fix everything else that's wrong. So a really good thing to do if you're feeling that urge, or you've been doing that, but you're feeling unsafe now as things get a little more scary, is to try to figure out, how do we rehab? And without an injury, it's hard, but we all know the places in our game that is a little bit weaker, or the imbalances in our body that we're all like, if only I had an extra 20 minutes a day, I'd totally fix my shoulder. You can now start treating that as your practice. So saying, okay, I want my hips to be more flexible, or I want to build the strength around my AC joint, or I want to build my quads around my knee pain. And then build a program, or reach out to a person who's capable of building that program for you, and start to engage in that as your daily practice.
Cool. So Guys, really quick, just a quick reminder, if you have questions for Nicole, any mental health questions that you want answered, any questions in general for both of us, please drop them in the comments box below. We would love to hear some of the things you guys want to know about. I think it's important, and we have somebody who is licensed that can answer your questions. So please reach out in the comments below. So what would you say to somebody, or what would you tell somebody who's really feeling, because I know there are some people in the jiu-jitsu community, people I've talked to, who are really kind of at their lowest low in this and are feeling hopeless and are feeling like the sport's never going to come back, gyms are not going to open, things are just never going to go back to the way they are. I'm not going to ever get better. I'm not going to get that blue belt. I'm not going to get that purple belt. What would you tell somebody who's really kind of hitting that rock bottom of despair? What advice would you give somebody in that mindset?
Well, it's hard because we don't know what's gonna happen, but it'll come back when it comes back. It might not be as soon as you'd like it to. It's really just about sitting back and being like, okay, well, and it's that same question. Why do I do this sport beyond the belt or beyond the competition? What else is it that this sport gives to me? And how can I engage in that? And for a lot of people, it's the community. So engaging with people from your gym. A lot of times it's the motivation. So getting those same people from your gym and having a competition, like doing something that reminds you of what it is beyond the belt or the sport, right? Then you also need to consider, how low are you? And is this really just because the sport's not there, right? Like, it's probably a little bit deeper than that. And for a lot of people right now, being alone for 30 days is not easy because we're alone with the things that we try to avoid. We go to the gym and we go to these places and we spend a lot of time in an effort to deal with the things that are hard. And it's not actively avoiding it. Like, you're not saying, I'm going to go to the gym because I don't want to deal with my feelings. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's, I feel better about this feeling when I go to the gym, but you're not actually engaging with the feeling or what's driving it or bringing it up. So in this time when we don't have things to engage in as actively to distract us or help us deal with these feelings, what we'll see is a resurgence of a lot of feelings that we probably think we've dealt with, but here they are. Aloneness is hard. And sometimes we have to remember there's a difference between feeling alone and feeling lonely, right? And when we're feeling alone, that is a very isolated, scary, dark feeling. And that can put a lot of us into a place where it doesn't even feel like reaching out to other people is going to help us feel less alone. When we're feeling lonely, we think, oh, I'll get on the phone. I'll call Mike. That'll be great. We'll talk for a half hour and then I'll go about my day. When we're feeling alone, it's a really scary feeling. It feels like we can't connect to people. We're feeling isolated. We don't know if people care about us. So that can start coming up. And if that's what you're feeling, if you are feeling so down because you don't know what's next for jiu-jitsu, it's a lot of introspection to say, where is that coming from? And maybe it's time that I seek a different sort of help for that feeling. And so looking into therapy, looking into peer support groups is important. Even just finding your own peers who you can talk to about that is sometimes valuable. A lot of people don't think therapy is for them, and maybe it's not. I'm biased, obviously. I think that everybody could benefit from therapy. I go to therapy. I've been in therapy for years. So I do think that it's important to know that if you're really low, that the suicide prevention hotline is always available on your phone. If you just Google suicide prevention hotline, or even just suicide prevention on Google, like a box pops up and it gives the phone number. So that phone number, since I'm talking about it, is 1-800-273-8255. So if you're feeling really low and you're thinking about hurting yourself, maybe not even killing yourself, but you're just feeling in crisis and super alone, call that number. There's also a lot of talk therapy apps, which people who don't want to engage in regular therapy, you can download one of those apps. There's BetterHelp and there's Talkspace are two of the more popular ones, and they'll pair you with a therapist and you could talk to them. New York City right now, if you live in New York, because of everything that's happening here and what a weird time it is, right? New York City at nycwell.cityofnewyork.us. They have a free chat line. They have a phone call line. There's Headspace, which is a meditation app, is giving away some free courses through there. So you can access those resources. On the New York City site, there's a lot of peer support. So it's not therapy, you're talking to a mentor. So it'd be like just getting on text with a friend. A lot of people who feel this way also probably used to, maybe when they were younger, play a lot of multiplayer video games. Get back to that. Play those video games, get that community, talk shit to those people. That comes from there, and that's pretty helpful too from a peer support. So find those different ways to get peer support that maybe you haven't accessed in a while, but you used to access, and maybe they don't feel as good as jujitsu. Maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, they hit like a 7, and jujitsu was a 10 for you. It's better than like the 0 you're feeling right now. So try to recapture it, even if it's not perfect, get it as close as you can, or just feeling a little bit better. Focus not on feeling your best, but focus on feeling a little bit better. That's more obtainable right now.
Awesome. So what does Nicole do to decompress? You talked about being in therapy yourself. I am a huge advocate. I've been to therapy on and off for years myself, so I think therapy is great. Anybody watching needs to seek out a therapist. I'm sure you can DM Nicole for advice. But what do you do when you are maybe not feeling so well mentally? What are some of the things that Nicole does to decompress mentally?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. And it changes, right? It's variable. But what I've found when I've been talking to my patients about, and I think this is especially important for people who are really
Oh, you're breaking out, Nicole. I'm sorry. I don't know if everybody else can.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Try. That's better. Go for
better?
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So especially for people who are really active in their days. So people who are training daily, or people who are training a few times a week even, or people who are just doing something athletic, especially people who are living in Metro New York. What I've been trying to do is help people shift from their concept of exercise and training to this different concept of movement. We're losing a lot of physical movement, and energy creates energy. So the more we move in our days, the better we feel and the more energy we have to maybe do a harder workout in the evening. So actively in your day, seeking out movement and not exercise. So a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm not going to do that 5-minute workout video because I'm not going to sweat. I'm not going to lose 80 pounds if I do it. I'm only going to burn 60 calories. Start doing those 5-minute videos. If you know that you walk 15 minutes to the train every morning, try to do a little movement in the morning, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Try to find ways that you could recapture that movement. And so we're in a movement deficit in addition to losing our training. So really being mindful of moving. So personally, that's what I do. I try to keep my weekday structure very similar. So I'm lucky that I have a dog, so I get to go out and walk him, which is standard. But I also have like 15 minutes where I would be rushing to the train, and then another 8 where I would be rushing to my office. And I'm usually rushing because, whatever. So how can I get that back? And what I found is that in the morning, if I do like a 20-minute yoga is aspirational. I'm not going to do that. But if I do a 5-minute mini burn video on daily burn, great. Yeah, no, I didn't lose 8 pounds, but I'm also protecting my mental health a little bit, and I'm also creating that energy to start my day. So 5 minutes of that, and maybe then some stretching after I walk the dog, shower, get dressed. Now I sit down to work, and then thinking, okay, during my day, I usually have a coffee around 1, and I walk to the coffee shop, and then I walk to the water, and I can't do that anymore, but I can get up and do 10 minutes of movement. I can play a song and dance around. I can do the Macarena till my arms fall off.